Hey, hello everyone. I think welcome again to another episode of speaking to the best content marketing leaders globally. And I'm streaming here from New York, right across the Times Square. Uh, I have, and it's a pleasure to have Silas Inman, who leads the entire content marketing piece for MGH Life Sciences. Silas, it's a pleasure to have you. 13 years spent at the company, right? If I'm quoting it right, um,
Mhm.
it is gonna be very interesting to also understand what this content marketing looks like in a healthcare content company. And again, it's not one company, to what I understood from you, a house of brands, over 60, 70 brands in that one big giant mammoth house. Would be a very interesting conversation today. Thank you so much for kind of agreeing to do this on a shorter notice and then streaming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Super. So, Silas, how we usually kind of do this, we usually start with knowing you better, understanding where you grew up, how did you enter marketing as a domain. I saw that you had like a small amount of operations stint before you kind of move into MJH, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but I think would love to get a sense around where do you grow up, how has life been, and how did you enter here. And I think the second part to it would be knowing Silas as a professional, where you could run us through literally all the roles that you did up over the last 13, 14 years at MJH. Would lovely to know that.
All right, great. So let's see. Before my professional career, I had a lot of interests. I didn't really know. But probably like a lot of people, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So I explored a lot of different things. I did a little bit of freelance web development design. This is back HTML, CSS days. I had a love for science and medicine, so I got my EMT certification. And I entered college thinking pre-med was probably medicine was going to be what I was going to do. Somewhere along the line, my plans changed. I fell really in love with simulation animation. At the time I went to Eastern Michigan University. At the time they were launching a new major, helping to design a new major called around simulation animation and gaming, which now is multi-billion-dollar industry. So
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the first to graduate from Eastern Michigan University, actually, with a degree in simulation animation and gaming. Fast
Damn.
forward a little bit, I found a job actually initially that used kind of some of my web development skills to do a little bit of e-commerce. And at the time, I was around energy efficiency. I was managing a website, doing some e-commerce around these little devices on your home that helped you manage your electricity usage. And through that, I kind of discovered content marketing. So I started writing articles about what the device could do for you uh, to kind of sell more of the device. And so that's kind of how I discovered, the power of being able to tell a narrative that leads a person to a decision point of, I want to buy this device. Granted, it was a little bit hard in the energy efficiency world. After about the 50th or 60th article, there's only so many ways I could think of how to say, you need to save energy around the holidays. Would be great because it could be like, it's Christmas time. Those lights sure use a lot of energy. Um, but I would, I was time for a change, and I found MJH Life Sciences. Obviously, as I mentioned, I had an interest in medicine and science, which just the industry is focused. This company is focused entirely on healthcare. I
Mm-hmm.
had an interest in multimedia and video at the time in 2010, 2011. The company was really going from kind of a very print centric old media mindset to more of a digital first video mindset. So it played on some of those desires. And it had the, kind of an interesting take on, I guess, the content marketing piece that I fell in love with, an energy efficiency job. So I landed in MJH Life Sciences initially in OncLive, which was a kind of a starting website focused on oncology. Um, that's where I got to kind of flex my, scratch my medicine itch. I got to play around with launching OncLive TV, which was our video platform. And I got to, in this case, the driving mission of MJH is really to improve patient care worldwide. So from a content marketing standpoint, I wasn't necessarily selling devices. I was improving lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when we approached every piece of content, that was kind of the goal from a
Mm-hmm.
content marketing standpoint was how does this piece inform, enrich, educate a physician to be able to go back to their practice, treat a patient differently, and improve their lives. So
Right.
it's a different take on content marketing, but it's really has a lot of the same principles that I was using to sell gadgets. Um, and since then, and at the company, the rest has been history. We grew OnClive into one of the largest, well-known oncology websites for physicians that's out there. We
Mhm.
subsequently, off that success, kind of launched its sister site, Targeted Oncology. Um, in 2014, we moved into kind of more direct to patient. How can we help the patients become educated and kind of be a member of the conversation, improving their lives with their physicians through Cure magazine. And so since we've had that now for almost 10 years exactly today, I think we purchased it in October, I want to say 2014. So almost 10 years later. So, oncology has really got my footing. And that's definitely one where, I would say our mission is definitely the boldest because, most people have had, cancer impact their lives at some point. I actually lost an uncle earlier this year. I've had plenty of personal encounters with my family with cancer, and so it's really
Oh,
a unique, scenario where um, you can see in your own personal life the impact that the education of the physicians is making, and so it's a great thing to be a part of a company and to be making content that kind of leads to such a great objective at the end of the day.
interesting, interesting. And you've almost spent so long of a time at MJH, right? Did you ever feel like you're living a day twice, particularly? And if not, right, love to get a sense around how did you grow up the ladders, right, over there? I mean, now to leading content, but I saw you started being a web marketer to being someone who's also managing the website to then some parts of marketing operations. So love to get a sense on that. And then I think
Mm-hmm.
we can dive more deeper into how does content in a content marketing company, content marketing in a content company looks like. But I think to begin with
Sure.
your life story at MGH, how was that?
Sure. Yeah. So I've actually, this is a question that comes up pretty regularly of like, do you feel like you've lived the same day multiple times? And even in just a short time I was in the energy efficiency role, it definitely started to feel that way. That it was, I was trying to sell the same gadget over and over again. And, that's one of the things that I think I've fallen in love with, I guess, in the healthcare space. There's so much research, so much new information, so much change, so many breakthroughs that even if you're in the same role, 2 or 3 years go by and the industry is completely different. So when I joined in 2011 or 2011, there were new immunotherapies that were just new that some physicians were saying that'll never work. That has since completely revolutionized and changed healthcare. Survival for patients has bloomed. And then there's just been new iterations every 2 or 3 years. There's a new type of therapy that comes out. So even though some of the tactics haven't maybe changed as frequently or as much, the topics and the people we talk to and the spaces we touch on and the things we're talking about have changed so much that it kind of avoids that same day over and over and again kind of feel to it.
Well,
Um, and so to the second part, I guess as I came up through the company, so I think as when I joined, there was very much a small entrepreneurial mindset to the organization, where individuals wore a ton of different hats.
yeah.
So one of the hats that I was able to kind of quickly pick up and put on was around social media, and so we didn't really have a standardized approach to social media when I joined. So I was able to take that on at one point, kind of, I guess, seeing the success I was having with the OnClive social and media accounts. We moved that more broadly, and I became kind of the director of social media across the organization for a moment. And this was probably, if you want to say, 2013. So at that point, the focus, was very much around Twitter, Facebook. This was before TikTok. I think there was a brief moment when we thought Pinterest might be a thing. So at the time it was like, how can we schedule well, even there was just an overall awareness. What is social media? There were still people who were like, what is this social media thing? They weren't sure. So it was an
Mhm.
interesting time to be kind of getting involved in social media. And so we were able to kind of craft a strategy around that of, well, let's develop some KPIs, and what do we want to look at as an ultimate measure? Why are we using social media? What's the goal here? And there are plenty of naysayers who would say you don't need to be on social media. Your audience is physicians. They're all 55 and older. They're not on social media. What's the point of being on social media? You could just, don't waste your time. And, I think while in some cases that may have been slightly true, there was still a very, small, 25% or more audience of our physician audience who was on social media. And when they were on social media, they were ravenous for it. And they were evangelizing their other, physician colleagues of why they needed to be on social media. And we were able to kind of be a part of that evangelization and spread of social media amongst some of the physicians because, we were right there with them as one of the early voices with Enclave on Twitter, especially at the time, now X. And we've kind of evolved with that. But the main thing behind it all was always around the goal, which goes back to the education we provide. Obviously on social media, it's easy to get lost in
Yeah.
getting followers and reach of a post. But our ultimate goal, as I mentioned before, it was to improve patient care worldwide, which usually involves, bringing someone back to the website to learn about, the new advance in medicine. So for us, we set our goal as kind of, we want to bring them back. We want them to consume the content. And then we, further added on other goals to that as we evolved as a company. So one of the things that we were doing a little bit of when I joined the company were around live events. And
Hmm.
in 2011, we purchased the organization PER, which is a medical education company. With that, we got a number of large CME events. And then we started to launch our own events. And now it's to the point where we probably have about 1,500 live events across the organization that we hold every year. So that evolved our metrics a little bit, right? On social
Yeah,
media.
I
And
mean,
right.
you, how many social media handles have you got?
Yeah, so we probably across the 60 brands we have, they each probably have at least 4 or 5 at this point. So we're
So
talking
you had more
250.
content than enough from the events itself for your social media.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. Sorry, you can continue. Sorry.
Oh yeah. No, I was saying with the events that they changed our KPI from social media just so slightly. So we want to drive people to the articles to get them to consume the information too. We give them now to convert to register for our events. And that's where, we played a little bit more around our content marketing expertise around the events. So out of all those great conferences comes, great content. There's great presentations. There's great talks. And we found nothing leads to a better conversion a lot of times than the content itself and the experience. People go to conferences for either to network or to learn.
Yeah.
And if we can provide a summary of the learning part of that, and they see it and they go, "Oh my God, that's what they have at this conference. I think I think I'm interested in going to learn about that." And then we found in the physician world, there's also a big component of networking amongst physicians. They like to they have what they call their key opinion leaders, these physicians who are doing a lot of the research. They're involved in a lot of the groundbreaking advances. They're kind of the ones who discover the different things, and then it spreads out to the community. We discover that's an important part. They want to go and they want to talk to these researchers who did the clinical trials. So they haven't maybe used the new treatment in their own practice, and they're a little bit curious about what it was like. And when a new agent's approved, it's usually just those who were in the clinical trial who have used it. So that's their experience. That's their chance to go and talk to one of the researchers and say, "Well, what did you find when you gave this? What were the side effects? How did the patients handle it? What tricks did you find helped with the patient communication?" So we were really able to kind of accelerate that improvement in patient care through the live events, not just from the sessions, but also through those interactions between the presenters and the attendees. And we kind of developed this mantra coming out of our conferences, hear it on Friday, use it on Monday, of like, how can we make something we're presenting at those conferences so impactful that they
Yeah.
leave and it changes their practice almost immediately. Um, and that's something we carry through. Well, all of our meetings really are the 1500. Some of them, even if it's down to a 3 hour, quick discussion of patient cases, that's the ultimate goal. How can they hear something in that session that immediately changes the way they treat their patients?
That is super cool. And just wanting to also get in a category like yours, which is the healthcare segment entirely, right? It is a highly compliant, not a lot of room for mistakes kind of a category, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you are eventually like one odd mistake can have a very large ripple effect downwards, basically, right? Just wanting to get a sense around how have you been able to build a content flywheel, particularly at MJH, right? When it comes to this entire processes around compliance, around quality check, around editorials, fact checking, subject matter expertise, why are people, processes, technology, whatever, but love to get a sense around that, Silas.
Yeah. So the unique position, I guess, that MGH is in that scenario as an independent publisher, we don't have a lot of those same compliance concerns involved. So as an independent, obviously we want the fact checks to be as good as possible. We want the information we're providing to be good, but we're not held to the same sort of rigor compliance wise by the FDA for that maybe a pharmaceutical company might be.
Mm-hmm.
So within our company, though, because of the many different obstacles that pharmaceutical companies and other companies marketing in the healthcare space do face, we've developed kind of our own medical communications specialty company. We call it our clinical communications team. And so when it comes to all those major obstacles of the medical legal review process and fact checking, referencing, annotating, all the rigor that goes into that, we actually have a
Yeah.
team of about 20. A lot of them are doctors, either PhDs, pharmacists, or medical doctors who specialize in just doing all that and making sure that everything is checked off. So in that case, it's usually for a pharmaceutical client. So we're usually making some type of medical education in conjunction with that client. We're still obviously
Mm-hmm.
making sure that it's fair, it's balanced, that it's educating the audience, and that we're checking all those compliance boxes off as well. So that's probably the most, when it comes to a compliance bucket, that's probably the most that we deal in that space, was this that kind of pharmaceutical created content.
And when it comes to even the processes, like when you kind of hire the right kind of people to create this content, of course your teams particularly, right? What are usually the quality benchmarks and all of these things across the board, right? I mean, how do you kind of factor in? And I'm always pretty sure you would never get the exact talent that you want, so how is also the training process at your end? Because now you have been there in the system for a real long while, right? So how is that flywheel of actually bringing someone at par with what is expected? Because I think the core importance of MJH Life Sciences for any customer of yours is basis the quality of the content that you're creating, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm just going in deeper into asking you how you created that center of excellence particularly.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. So I've found over the years that almost, especially on the editorial side, that no one really comes in with any extensive medical background. So you
Yeah.
might be able to get people who have a journalistic background, who understand the concepts of how to craft a story or how to craft, a news article. Or we might get, the reverse side of that, we might get professionals in who know the science, but they may not necessarily know how to craft that news article and that story. So we've built a pretty extensive training program. It focuses very heavily on what do you need to know in your first 30 days. So we have a kind of a separate 30-day chunk set aside for specific skill development. So if they're coming in with more of that medical background, that might focus in on how to craft a story, how to write, what key points to look for in, to craft your narrative. For those on the more journalistic side who are coming in, it's what is the science stuff, right? How do you write using clinical trial statistics? How do you how do you understand, some type of leukemia that you've never even heard of before you took this job? Um,
Yeah.
and so that's really what the first 30 days includes. The next kind of 30 days within that 60-day window really goes down to refining those skills. So we'll do a lot of shadowing, a lot of working with colleagues who have been here for a little while to kind of provide pointed changes and edits, a lot of track changes, a lot of, do this, a lot of shadowing, a lot of learning from someone with a little bit more experience. And the next 30 days in that 90-day window are really around kind of stretching your wings and trying it a little bit.
Yeah.
So we expect when someone has learned something, they've been shadowing someone, and they try it for the first time, there's going to be a little bit of errors in there. So we of course still will monitor and kind of follow that person very closely. And then from the next year forward, we create what we call individual development plans that really look at that individual's desires and wants, and we usually try to find someone who has a connection to the space,
Mhm.
and an interest in the space. And we say, well, what do you want to learn more about? What do you want to build? What do you want to develop? And then we'll focus the next, you know, uh, 9 months or so on building out those skills and letting them try those new things, also while tweaking the things they learned in the first 90 days. So it is very much the first year, I want to say, is really all around kind of getting all those skills in place to kind of result in the quality and relevant content that we produce every day.
That is super interesting. And then just also just one more part I want to come in here, right? Like you said about the people and the
Mm-hmm.
process that you said for onboarding those people and their way of working, right? Technology, again, I'm hoping is a big role to play in two places. One is using technology on the AI side of the world to create the content that you're creating. The second is also a lot of use of technology to also manage the entire content work, what I would call as, I mean, we at Pepper built this entire piece. We call it the content OS. Basically, we call
Mm-hmm.
it the content operating system. But imagine it, this is the entire workflow management of content because it's so many people involved, so many stakeholders involved, so much of rework coming in on content, so much of fresh content being returned. There is a systematic method of research that goes into
Mm-hmm.
picture. How do you manage that? What does that stack of content for you looks like?
So a lot of that comes into that onboarding process, as you might have assumed. So um, the biggest part of it is really, across our 60 brands, each focuses in on a different area of expertise. So a lot of it is getting to know that area of expertise in and out, and that comes down to even just knowing, where to look for different things. I would say from a technology stack, there's different tools that we're using to help expedite. So I think AI transcription has probably been one of the best and biggest tools that's helped speed up. I remember a day when people had to sit there and listen to audio interviews and try to write out what the person was saying. So the one we probably use the most is, I think, Otter.ai. It's probably built into every platform at this point. Dictate within Word. There's a ton of different AIs that will transcribe. Um, but a lot of people don't come in knowing about those. So even training on that and introducing people to that ability to get a transcript fast is groundbreaking. And of course, in I guess a little almost 2 years ago now, when ChatGPT broke onto the scene, that kind of transformed our thinking on AI. We had seen different AI tools and different data tools across times that were built into CMS to maybe help, suggest keywords or to help, kind of suggest different ideas or concepts or word clouds, whatever it might be. But that was the first time I think we really saw a generative AI that could write something that could almost pass as human. And I think, as it's evolved, it's probably pretty close to passing for human now, and it's GPT 4.0 or Claude 2 or whichever platform you prefer. So I think now that that when it comes to AI use specifically, the training is around, what can we use it for as an assistant to make things faster? What can we use it for wholesale? Although I say that with a grain of salt, because I do think no matter the output from AI, it should be reviewed and edited and looked at by a human, even if it's just email content that's going out like a standard thanks for applying type thing. I still think there has to be a human touch on it. And then what can we use it for, to kind of supplement some type of human task. So we found it's great at kind of helping create outlines. You can take some of those AI generated transcripts, feed them in, and ask for main takeaway points. Email replies. We it's great at that, helping craft maybe some social media points for more generic things. We found it's good for those types of things. I think the real interesting point with AI especially is going to be where it goes in the future. So even just within the year or two that it's been ChatGPT has been out, we've already seen such an interesting evolution of how good it has been, how good it has become, and its answers have become, and then a connection to the web and kind of more updated responses and all those different components. And you got to put on different hats when you're trying to look to the future of, what's this going to look like in the future in terms of, the world of content. And, I think for news, it's going to be a very interesting change. I do think
Right.
the general first news alert, I don't see any particular reason that can't be written by an AI. It's usually pretty straightforward. It's usually, here's what we know happened. But I think where companies like MGH will excel is providing the insight and the interpretation. And that's always where our events have lived, especially. So some new research will be presented at the conference. A lot of our events are, what does this mean for you as a physician? It's the expert who was in the clinical trial, distilling it down, talking about what it means. And so that's what I like to call it, kind of more human content. And, I think as the AI starts to take on some of those more robotic things, which, to be honest, as humans, we were even sort of doing robotically in the news world. I think that's where some of the more human content components are really going to kick in. What is the opinion? What is your thoughts? What is your experience? Because robots don't have experience, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's where
Human intelligence.
right. So I think it's where it's going to shift. Is a lot more experiential. What did you feel? What did you see? What did you do in response to this? Things that are not necessarily going to be data points or can be figured out with a large language model. But I think there's still 100% be a place for that. And we're starting to see it more and more get integrated into the Google search results, where you'll search for something. And I think, a large portion of people no longer probably click on those search results because they got their answer from Google. But if you're looking for human to human insight, shared experience, I think that's when you're going to need to go to something else. And that's what we're going to look to be providing more and more into the future.
Now, that is super interesting. Okay. Also, just a quick question, right? There on this entire AI piece again. I mean, just not in text as a format of content. When it comes to even multimodal formats of content, right? What are your thoughts on the entire usage of AI to create the shoulder content? Because I think that is one big part where people fail to create a lot of repurposing of the existing masterpieces of content. Basically, has there been like clear use cases that you have particularly been able to identify?
Yeah, the healthcare space is unique. As I mentioned before, one of the things I think that makes it interesting for me is that it's always changing and always evolving. Along those same lines, we have less of that old content that's still relevant to the most recent standard of care. So we haven't had as much ability to go in and kind of repurpose and reuse some of that older type pieces. From a training standpoint, I think, a lot of obviously models have been trained off of some of that old historical, and it's good to have a, base point to start from, especially within healthcare. So I know that there are different models that have been trained off of PubMed, which is our big, repository of peer-reviewed literature. And there's other ones out there. So it's been used mostly, I would say, at this point as a kind of a training model, more so than one to go back and like reskin and reuse. Just because of the nature of healthcare's evolution over time.
Makes sense. And just one more part to this entire conversation is also about creating conviction of content to the customers. A lot of companies, including the pharma side of the businesses, right? Why would they okay, so one point beyond, there is one part of conviction about, hey, we want to create content. There is a second part of the conviction about, this is how is the quality of how we want our content to look like, basically, right? when you are actually in a content company like that of an MJH, how is that conviction built with the customers? Basically, when it comes to, okay, how do you convince a particular customer on saying, hey, you gotta trust us with telling us, hey, these are the 10 things that we're going to take care of when it comes to content. This is going to be as good as the equivalent of what a full-time 10-year in-house company would do, for example, in that case.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to kind of get a sense around how you build that trust with customers when it comes to the quality of content.
Yeah, for sure. So for us, as I mentioned, healthcare is always evolving, always changing. So for us, the speed component is definitely a big part. Um, when something happens, there's usually, you need to know about it when it happens. So for us, we build trust by going to where the news is being presented. We travel to a lot of the medical conferences around the country, and we gather that information in real time as quick as we can and relay it to our audience. So they know they can trust us to have the latest information, the most up to date information. But then we add a fact check component to everything. So we make sure every data point's correct. We make sure that we're not relaying false information. If this trial said something, that we're saying exactly what it said and not trying to editorialize or add some type of spin to us. We try to be fair. We're covering a little bit of everything. And we cast a wide net. We talk to a lot of the physicians in the space, ask them what they want to hear more of, and that's the thing that we cover. So I think through those, we're providing something that's really relevant to their practice. It's coming in real time or as close to real time as we can. And through the fact checking, we actually have an internal division here that oversees as well, about 20 copy editors who will crawl through every single word just to make sure, even grammatically, that it's, of high quality. And in something, like healthcare where, if you get the wrong number in there, let's say the dose is 1.4 and you rate 3.4, that can dramatically change someone's life. So they have to know if they're going to use us as a reference source that we're getting it right. And I think it's not even just getting it right once; it's a habit of getting it right. That's important because they know we've gotten it right. Yeah, it's a consistent, correct.
No, makes sense. I think this is super helpful, Silas. Very, very insightful set of information. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that why is medical, like how different is life sciences content and what it does at the back, because it's still not glamorous at the forefront in the consumer market that people look at. So they don't know still what goes in the nitty-gritties of that. But for the audience's reference, guys, any drug that we kind of taken from, like that we take in from a pharmacy maybe, or from
Mm-hmm.
example for any healthcare, for any pharmaceutical company making it, there's a lot of research that goes into creation of that drug.
Mm-hmm.
For that research, there's a lot of data backed content that is needed, as well as the drug reaching you is an outcome of the drug having gone through multiple channels, 4 and 4. And
Right.
through that dissemination, there is a lot of content needed. So people like Silas are actually responsible for bringing all of that to life. So
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. Uh, Silas, I think I just have one last question.
Yep.
You're dealing with a set of audiences who are already healthcare experts,
Mm-hmm.
right? How does it feel to deal with an expert teaching them the hook of the trade? And it is very difficult to convince someone because there is a bias in their head on saying, hey, I mean, I know this, I've been doing this ever since our lives, right? So how has that thought leadership piece been for you? Because you're also young. I mean,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it's not that you are a doctor who is like a veteran for many years, who's kind of done this
Sure.
all across. So how is that for you?
Yeah. I will say that the biggest compliment I could ever get is if I'm having a conversation or an interview with a physician and they ask me at the end if I'm a doctor. So that's usually the most proud that I can feel. Well, except for if they ask me if I'm a resident or fellow or something younger, then I really feel
Yeah.
happy because then I'm young.
So you've not been,
But,
you have not been back for your age. Also, you've not back for your profession.
right. Yeah. So I would say, and that's something I was very intimidated about, to be honest, when I started. But, physicians especially uh, they're used to dealing with people who don't know a lot about medicine every single day. All of their patients know very little. So I think they all are used to it and they all know how, and they're very, very kind, caring people. They care for patients all day. So I was definitely intimidated about that when I came in, and I found these are all wonderful, caring people who are taking care and trying to make people better all day long, and they're all great. And the thing, with healthcare too, most, as drug development starts, most drugs do not make it through. So they'll start in early preclinical studies, maybe with 5,000 different molecules. Maybe only 3,000 or so will make those into patients. And then from there, then to a phase 1 trial, it gets narrowed down. And so maybe out of those 5 to 10,000 molecules, 1 or 2 make it through 10 years later to actually get to patients. And so as a physician who's treating patients all day long, and most of them are very, very busy, it's hard to know where to focus. It's hard to know, like I heard about these drugs over here that are being experimented on in mice, and that's probably 10 or 15 years away. So I can't pay too much attention to that. And I heard about this thing that's in a phase 1 clinical trial, but again, that could be 3 or 4 years away. And what are the chances that makes? So I can't really pay too much attention to that. So we have a very busy audience who, it's hard to know what to focus on because so many things do not pan out in the end.
Yeah.
That I think when we're coming to them and we say, look, we have this, this drug, it was successful in phase 3. It's going to the FDA. So the data seems to check out. Here's a doctor who used it. He had a great experience with it. I think that provides them with information and help to do their jobs better that they're looking for at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter, I guess, if I have any medical experience, if I'm giving them information that can help them. I think that's what, the most important part is.
No, this is super cool, man. I think this is very, very helpful. Thank you so much for this. I think it's been a very, very insightful conversation, knowing from a subject matter expert, content side of the world, right? So, I think thank you so much for doing this. I think we'll move to the last leg of the conversation where we're going to know the fun side of Silas, right?
Sure.
And so I'm going to shoot out like a rapid fire set of questions for you to answer. You got 6 seconds to answer it. Whatever's on the top of your head, just blurt it out, right?
6 seconds. All right.
So we're going to begin on the count of 3, 2, 1. Silas, what's your comfort food?
Tacos. I love tacos.
Oh, okay. Okay. Favorite sport?
To watch football, to play soccer.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, that depends on my mood.
Favorite mood and then the movie.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, if I'm feeling, if it's Halloween time, so we're coming up on Halloween time, Young Frankenstein. It's funny. It's got quick humor.
Okay. Which brand do you think does their marketing absolutely wrong?
I see some Lululemon commercials, and I'm not really sure who they're for.
Which one? I didn't get it.
Lululemon. I think.
Okay, Lululemon commercials, and you don't understand. You know what? Actually, now that you say, even I realize, unless I had known of Lululemon as a brand, what they make as a commercial, I won't ever know that they're selling clothes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for actually making that insight out. I'm actually at Times Square right now. So there's a lot of Lululemon commercials around here, and I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you know, if not, I don't think it's converting anyone. Yeah.
Yes, makes sense. Okay, what's the favorite holiday destination and where you've been last to?
Oh, holiday destination. I'm a homebody. I like to stay home. I like to stay home on the holidays for the most part. Although I am tempted by Paris for Christmas.
Ah, nice. Are you going this Christmas as well?
I'm not. I'm staying home.
Okay.
Homebody.
Homebody. Yeah. Okay. So, one thing at MJH you would like to change in the current system of work that happens with what you do, basically, that you think is gonna be like an accelerated growth for you and anyone else, and something that you really want to change?
Sure. Let's see. I think going to the future, data is going to keep being more and more important. So if I could change anything, it would be that we would have pristine, clean, fast gathered, amazing data. I think as most people who work in data, it's very hard. It's not as clean as you think it is. So that would be my one wish, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And the last one, if you were not a content person, right, and not the marketer that you are, basically, what would you be doing in an alternate career option?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, simulation animation gaming. I would love to be making video games. I think that would
Completely justifies why you're a homebody. I mean, I can completely see that now. Favorite
Yeah.
game? What's your favorite game like?
So I like the real time kind of turn based, or like the turn based strategy, like Civilization, or I also like Age of Empires. I like kind of the period piece games. Yeah.
Do you have like a gaming setup at home?
Not an extensive one, no. I'm a PC gamer for the most part, so just a standard PC. I made a few upgrades. Yeah.
Super. No, that's been a fun conversation, Silas. Thank you so much for doing this. It was really, really a pleasure hosting you here, and I hope you had fun as well.
I did. Thank you for having me.
Super, super.